there. This is Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor, welcoming you to this edition of Supervisor Spotlight. We're here at Long Island MacArthur Airport in the studios of Long Island News Radio, and so excited to have our special guest here with us, Monsignor Jim Vlaun from the Catholic Faith Network, formerly Telecare, for those of you who might not be aware of the change. But I just am so excited that you're here, Father Jim.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm glad to be with you.
So how does it feel being on the other side? You know, you do all that broadcasting worldwide now. And,
I don't have to worry. This is great.
Yeah, it is.
I can sit and just enjoy. I did a show this morning. I taped my radio show last night, but today it's just, you're driving the bus. I can sit back and enjoy.
Well, this is cool. All right, so I want to ask if you would be willing to share with our listeners and viewers, how did you get started? What drove you to become a priest?
Well,
when did that start? It's
probably way back, when I was a little guy, probably like 12, 13 years old. I think one of the first events really was my sister passed away, and she had acute lymphatic leukemia. And back in the day, there really wasn't much. And we lived in West Babylon, and my sister was at Good Samaritan Hospital, and the community chipped in, and they helped my family, my mom, my dad, and I. They helped financially because the insurance eventually runs out, and you need some extra help. And they, even in the days before all of that was organized, there was no internet, right? So you couldn't have one of these funds or anything like that.
GoFundMe page.
Exactly. But people did it.
Right.
And they helped us out. And I never forgot that. And I also remembered that journey, having faith involved in it, like my sister's journey home to God, having faith involved in it. And so somehow it kind of became, I want to help other people in their journey in life. And I want to help other people along to recognize that God is with them on the bad days, but on the good days too.
How old was she?
She was 9 and I was 13.
Oh, that's tough.
So we kind of walked through that together as a family. And then there was no, post-death anything, right?
No counseling,
nothing.
No beravement, no children's bereavement
nobody
camp,
thought about
all
it yet.
Those wonderful things, yeah.
So it was tough, and as much as people were kind, like I never forget, like the night after the funeral, I was setting the table for dinner, which was my job, and I set 4 places.
Oh, wow.
And I remember my mom breaking down. And
a
I looked
simple
at
thing like that, right?
I didn't realize. I was like, geez, how could I forget that?
Right.
It's 3 of us now,
So you grew up in West Babylon, and I know that you went to St. John the Baptist High School.
Yes, I did. Graduated in 1979.
And I guess that started your love of the town of Islip, right?
Absolutely.
You've been an Islip guy for a long time now.
I have been so lucky. And this is the truth. If you think about it, I was ordained a priest in 1988, and I was stationed at St. Mary's in East Islip, the only church I was ever stationed in.
Wow.
And then I went to St. John the Baptist Diocesan High School. I went back to my high school where I was for 13 years.
That must have been, I had the opportunity to go back to my high school because they closed it and they were doing kind of like a farewell open house Dominican commercial in Jamaica.
Sure.
And I remember walking, this is just last summer, and I remember walking through the building and looking in the gymnasium, and everything kind of looked the same. It hadn't changed, and it's been a few years.
Sure.
But to go back to your high school in the capacity of being, the chaplain for the high school must have been so awesome.
Oh, it was great. I could tell you a quick story. I went back with a whole new administrative team to kind of try to turn the school around a little bit. It was losing enrollment, So we divided up the secretarial pool in this administration meeting, And I said to the other administrators, I'll go last. Pick who you think you need. I'll be happy to take who's ever last. So the person...
Let me interrupt. You know what that just flashed in my mind? Being a little kid, being on the schoolyard grounds, picking teams for a softball game, and just standing there hoping that somebody picks you.
Of course. And I was always the last one anyway.
Me too.
It didn't bother me one bit. So everybody picks, and the person who was left was this nun who I know you knew very well too, Sister Rose Toronto.
Oh my gosh.
So I go out into the general office area after this meeting, and I say, Sister Rose, you're not going to believe this. We're going to work together. I said, you're going to be my secretary, my assistant. And she looked back at me. She had known me from when I was a student in that school.
Right.
And she said, I wouldn't have chose you.
Oh,
and that's how it all started.
For anyone who did not have the privilege of knowing Sister Rose, she was absolutely incredible. And talk about Dominican commercial. Yeah. She was my music teacher.
She was, right. She always bragged about that.
She was my music teacher. Sister Joseph Maria was her name then.
Sure.
And along with Sister Claire Marie.
Sure, Claire Marie Wentzler.
Right. Yep. They were the music teachers. And so fast forward, I moved to West Islip. I become the legislator back in the early 90s and get very involved in St. John's, and who's sitting there but Sister Rose?
No.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was so cool for me because she would be so excited. A Dominican girl, you're a county legislator. I mean, like,
Exactly
she thought
right.
that was so important.
She bragged about you all the time. And she became a mom to me, a counselor.
She was such a good friend.
Everything. She was a dear, dear woman, and love her. She's in heaven now praying for you and me, so it's a good thing.
And thank God for that.
Yeah.
But to give you an idea of what an incredible person she was, she's the only person that I know that on her prayer card was a recipe for pasta fagioli.
Well, I got to tell you the truth. She made the best pasta fagioli I ever had. And when she died, I know that she wanted that. She wanted the recipe on her prayer card.
Yep.
And I said, I don't think the Dominican's going to let you do it, but I think Doug Chappie will.
Right.
So I asked Doug Chappie if he would make special cards up, and he did.
Yeah, and he did.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
That was awesome.
She was great. So you're there as a priest, and so how do we get into where you're at now?
How did this ever
Because I know
happen? Yeah.
music is so important
Yep.
to you, too.
Two other things happened. Like I am a gigantic Beatles fan, always was, you know.
Me too.
When I was ordained in 1988, your parents traditionally buy you a chalice. So I go with my parents and we're buying the chalice. The chalice was like $4,000.
Oh, wow.
For my mom and dad. I mean, that was ridiculous money, but they insisted on buying me a chalice. It's not very ornate or anything, but that's what they cost. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking to have engraved on it. Every priest has something engraved on their chalice, a quote from Scripture. On mine, engraved around the cup that we use, it says, "And in the end, the love you take equals the love you make," which is from Abbey Road.
Right.
So I always had this love of the priesthood and music. It's amazing. So early on, Monsignor Tom Hartman, who's really my predecessor in a lot of this work that I'm doing, asked me if I would come in and do the radio show Religion and Rock. And I've done that for 31 years. I've been able to use rock music and talk about God's presence in the midst of that. That's so cool.
Yeah, that is so amazing. It really is.
So that started, and then I went back to school to study and get a master's degree in broadcasting. So that happened in the very early days, too. So while I was at St. John's, I was going to school at the same time and getting the master's degree. So that was kind of fun.
There you are ministering to students. You're a student yourself.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So that had to make you that much more effective.
It was fun. It was really great. And I loved being with those young people. And I can't tell you how many of them I've had the privilege to marry and baptize their kids and give their kids first communion. It's just been a tremendous privilege for me.
I remember a particular project that they did at St. John's, and I'm pretty sure you were there at the time, and it was to address the issue of homelessness.
Absolutely.
And they had set up cartons in the gymnasium and slept overnight to get the sense of what it might be to be homeless.
Yep. And then, we moved that out to Montauk Highway, and we slept there so that could be a sign to the rest of the community and a reminder.
And it was.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
How many years ago was that? And I still remember it.
Yeah. Well, you were always a great help with that, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, anytime we had something where maybe the town could help us, you were always right there to help. And it was a big, giant help for us, honestly. It really was. And one of the first involvements I really ever had was when you invited me to do the prayer to open up the legislature. Yeah, and that was one of the first times I ever had an experience like that. And, back in the days, think about the 80s, it was a different situation. I used to do the prayer at Islip High School graduation. I used to do the prayer at East Islip. And we'd always brag. The Islip graduation was longer than East Islip.
Right. Okay.
They knew how to get them in and get them out, and I would always brag about that. You guys are great. But it's changed radically since then, Prayer in public has changed radically,
And, there's something to be said for that. And I haven't been there lately, but I do believe that they're still having someone do a prayer at the legislature, and I hope they do. And it's not something that we've ever done at the town.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever done that. I'm going to have to look into seeing if we can do something like that.
Well,
I know I've done it at, a swearing-in ceremony.
Sure.
But that might be kind of nice to just put everyone in the right frame of mind when they're, making decisions that impact people's lives. And also, too, to put people in the right frame of mind when they're coming up to speak to the board and to the public, to maybe be a little bit more respectful, because sometimes people are not. But on that note, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and I thank you for joining us here as we get to learn a little bit more about Monsignor Jim Vlaun. back to Supervisor Spotlight. This is Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor. We're in the studios here at Long Island MacArthur Airport, and I like to give that little plug in for our wonderful airport. And joining us today, we have Monsignor Jim Vlaun of the Catholic Faith Network. That's an incredible operation, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But, we were talking about how you got involved, how you became a priest, working at St. John the Baptist. But some of the things that I remember so vividly when I was volunteering with Our Lady of Consolation, chairing their board, and then morphing that board into the Continuing Care Division. Mm-hmm. You were a member of that board and very, very much involved in healthcare issues too, with the diocese, with Catholic Health Services. Sure. And let's talk a little bit about the dynamics of that and everything that's happening there. It's amazing.
It's an amazing reality. I'll tell you just a little backstory to that. When we get ordained, the bishop meets with you and he says, what would be one or two things you'd never want to be involved in?
You said healthcare.
I said healthcare for sure. I said, my sister died. I'm uncomfortable, particularly at Good Samaritan Hospital. I said it'd be tough for me, And where did I become a board member first was Good Samaritan Hospital.
On the board,
and then Our Lady of Consolation. And I've been there for 27 years, just retired actually from that. But what's interesting is, the Catholic Church provides in a number of different ways for people in which we would never be able to take care of everybody without our Catholic hospitals, without our nursing homes, without our home care. And so right in Islip, we have Good Samaritan Hospital, which has a tremendous and long-standing tradition. And I can let a little secret out. It's about to explode. They're building there, and they're going to be building a tremendous new emergency room, and all kinds of beautiful things are going to happen there, and parking, which is going to be a big thing for us.
And it's amazing when you talk about an emergency room, because I was there, 15, 20 years ago, maybe not even 20, when they put in the new emergency room, state-of-the-art, so big and spacious, and now they're bursting at the seams.
Exactly right. And that, for me, I always say that's the welcome mat. Your emergency room's your welcome mat. So that has to be great. That has to be fast-moving. It has to be state-of-the-art. And I have to say it's much, much improved. So if you haven't been there in a while, you'll be surprised when you go there. You'll see that. Then, of course, Our Lady of Consolation, which is a premier nursing home, very highly rated. Many more people now, families, are choosing to keep their loved ones at home, So we have Good Shepherd Home Care, which is great for people, and Catholic Home Care, which is great for people. So we developed a cancer center there now. So there's a beautiful cancer center where people can be treated for cancer, but they don't have to travel far from home, and it's not a big ride. You don't have to go to the city. You can get prescribed in the city, but it can be administered right there, which is so much better, so much better for people.
Construction is ongoing now, and I do believe they're targeting completion by August of this year, was the last thing I had heard.
Yeah.
But so the hospital, Good Sam, and, the entire health system for Catholic Health Services so much tuned in to the needs of the communities, and ever-changing, evidenced by the Cancer Center, knowing that there was a need there.
And also women's health. I mean, that's another big thing we've worked on, particularly at Good Samaritan. That's an important thing, particularly for all of the women who live on the south shore of this island, right? Our Islip people, you could think about that. I remember reading stories about it, that's for sure. I can remember it.
Well, It's interesting. This year is the 25th anniversary of the Breast Health Center at Good Samaritan Hospital.
Correct.
And really, that whole movement of the awareness of breast cancer, I really believe started there. I mean, I know it did. Lorraine Pace,
God bless her.
And I believe, I'm trying to think of her first name, it was Nickel. She was married to Dr. Nickel. They came to see me about wanting to do this mapping project, and asked if the Chamber of Commerce, I was the president at the time, if we would endorse their survey that they were trying to do. And I said, well, yeah, I can do that, but you need more validation than the Chamber of Commerce.
Sure. Right.
You need the hospital.
Yeah.
And at the time, Ted Schiebler was head of community relations at the hospital, and I put them in touch, and then the whole thing took off.
Yeah.
At the time, Suffolk Life printed the survey on the front page of the newspaper. That newspaper went free once a week to every home in Suffolk County.
Imagine.
And he ran that for a couple of weeks. His editor's wife had suffered from breast cancer, so he took a special interest in trying to help out. And, the rest is history. And the coalitions that were formed after that, there's one in Brentwood, there's one in Babylon, there's one in Islip, and, 1 in 9 in Nassau County. The whole thing just blossomed from that start, there in Good Samaritan Hospital.
And somebody had the idea and somebody had the dream. And thank God, we were there to be able to help that dream to become a reality.
Yep.
And think of the lives, right, that have been saved through that. It's incredible.
It's really amazing.
Yeah,
and other, hospitals have, taken on the cause
Sure,
too. Certainly
of course.
Northwell with Southside, they have a very active breast cancer suite going on there too. So, and there just doesn't seem to be enough resources. So,
That's the truth.
it's a good thing. It
Yeah.
really, really is.
No, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our system. I'm proud of the, St. Francis Hospital and the reputation we have internationally.
It is
It's
incredible. It really, really is.
And I'm very fortunate in that over the years I've gotten to know a lot of those doctors very well. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the shows I do, but one of them is a cooking show, believe it or
Yes.
not.
Oh, yes.
Not overly surprising, but some of the doctors, one is Dr. Schlafmitz, Richard Schlafmitz, who's one of the leading cardiologists in the world, and he's our lead at St. Francis. He comes on my show and he cooks.
Oh, isn't that cool?
Isn't that great?
Well, when you talk about St. Francis and being the leader in cardiology care, now we have the St. Francis suite at Good Samaritan Hospital.
Absolutely.
So people don't have to go north. They don't have to go west to
Yeah.
St. Francis. They can still get that same level of care right here on the South Shore.
And that's headed up by Dr. Chris Lamondola, who is
Yeah.
a wonderful, excellent doctor. If it was my dad, that's where I want my dad to be. I tell people that all the time.
That's great.
A
It really,
man.
really is. So all of those disciplines are being addressed, top shelf. We had the young man, and I say young because he looks like he's 12, that heads up the brain aneurysm unit at Good Samaritan Hospital.
Right.
He was here, sitting right where you are. But that was so fascinating, listening to his history and where he's been educated. He was born in Greece,
Wow.
came here young, was educated here, Dartmouth and Harvard, and, but they recruited him from Philadelphia, came here, set up that whole brain aneurysm center at Good Samaritan Hospital, and his whole team of experts that were there in Philly followed him here. So, they have top shelf now brain aneurysm center right here.
And sort of related to Stroke Center, right? That we have this
Yep.
tremendous stroke center now, too. So I'm so glad that, again, the church is involved in the community in that way, sort of in a related way, really, like our Catholic schools, right?
Right.
Our Catholic schools complement the community, too. They're there to help what really is a beautiful gift to the whole community in a lot of ways. I always tell people, we're all involved in Catholic schools, whether we have a kid or not, because they're there for everybody. That's the point,
I was over at St. Patrick's when you talk about Catholic schools with the Brian McNamara. The school's population was doing a little farewell for him because he's going to St. Dominic's in Oyster Bay. And it was so cool to see the kids, one grade after another, coming up to read poems or sing to him. But you saw that sense of community.
Sure.
That you just don't get.
And history, right?
And history.
It's beautiful.
And history, yeah.
It's a good thing.
So, in any event, we were talking about the healthcare, but so we do the healthcare, and now I want to talk about TV and what you're doing there at the Catholic Faith Network, which was Telecare.
Incredibly exciting.
I feel like I still have to explain that when I say CFN to somebody, but that'll change
in time. Yeah,
too.
what happened is as we've grown across the country, other states, Telecare didn't mean anything, and we did some work in studying that, and people thought it was healthcare related. They thought you call and you rent a hospital bed on TV, sort of like a hospital QVC. And we're like, oh boy, we better think about changing the name. So we did a lot of work on that, and we finally changed it to the Catholic Faith Network, or CFN.
Yeah.
And that's what we just kind of branded about a year ago now. So we're very happy about that.
But it's catchy. Anytime you use an acronym like that, people will they'll adapt.
We're glad. The mugs are in, so that's good.
Oh, okay.
That's a good sign,
there's
right?
no going back now.
No, that's it. We bought the mugs.
All right. On that note, we'll take a little break and come back and talk more about what's happening at CFN. to Supervisor Spotlight. I'm Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor, here in the studios at Long Island News Radio with our special guest, Monsignor Jim Vlaun, or as I like to say, Father Jim. Thank you so much for being here. So we talked a lot about a lot of things, but now I want to dig into what's happening at CFN. What's going on there? One of the most popular shows, of course, is Real Food. But there's so much going on there. It's really, really interesting. You've done a marvelous job.
Well, thank you. It's an exciting place to be. And what's happened is, we began really in 80,000 homes. That's where we started about 15 years ago. And what began to happen...
That's a short period of time when you think about it.
Oh, it's tremendous growth. Yeah,
15 years is short to be where you are today.
In 28 states.
28 states.
28 states. So we're building a network right across the country. But one of the things we're finding is, people don't really know a lot about the Catholic Church. How do you find out? Read about it in secular press. Read about it in hear about it on secular television or radio. And you don't really get the full picture. You don't get the clean, unadulterated picture. Just like your show. I mean, this is you directly speaking to your people. That's what we need. So that's what we're building there. And we do it in a lot of different ways. For some homebound people, we're it. So we have the rosary, the traditional things, and Mass every day, and devotion, so people can pray and find some hope with us, But we have, shows that entertain, shows that educate, shows that inspire, movies, all kinds of stuff all the time. We produce personally 19 different shows.
That is amazing.
And we have 4 studios altogether that we use. We have 2 in Manhattan, 1 in Yonkers, and Uniondale.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you talk about shows that entertain, I don't think you're doing it any longer, but I do remember Divine Intervention.
Oh, it was a great game show. Holy cow, that was fun.
Yeah.
We had a good run with that. Yeah, that was hosted by Monsignor Joe DeGracco.
Yes.
That was a fun show.
I was on it once.
Well, you really?
I was. And I was so upset at myself because I didn't, win.
And what you won was really nothing worth winning, but you won. Right?
I know, but it was
funny.
It's amazing how you get yourself so into it and can get pressured so easily.
I know. I replaced Monsignor Tom Hartman. So Monsignor Tom Hartman recommended I go back to school. He's really my mentor.
Oh, he was a wonderful human being. He really was. And to have him know you and to care for you and love you, that was a blessing.
I thank God every day for that,
Yep.
And I remember when I went there, they said to me, my staff said, some of the people were there, said, well, what are you going to do? Like, he does the show The God Squad with Rabbi Mark Gelman.
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? So I said, well, I don't know any rabbis. I said, I'm an Italian guy. I mean, what's big for me is the table. Sundays with my family, having dinner, and the table of the church, right? Going to the altar.
Right.
So let's do something. I said, why don't we try doing a cooking show? So we did 3. And we tested it. It was just Nassau and Suffolk County at the time. And it went through the roof. People loved it.
Yep.
So we built it up, and now it's in its 15th season. Like I said, it's in 28 states. We're on all of the other platforms like Roku and Apple TV and everything else. And I get asked all the time to be on the Food Network and to be on the Today Show. I don't do any of that. Because what I really want to be about is the message of God, And I don't want to, I'm not interested in celebrity status necessarily or anything like that. It's just about doing the work of God. And I think that the show talks about the importance of the meal, getting together with family, sitting around the table, and also how that table connects with the table, and that's important.
And when you say table, I think about Lydia Bastianich.
Sure.
With her to the table, everyone,
Tutte a tavola, Amangiani.
Yep. And she obviously is a frequent guest on your show.
And a dear friend, a dear friend.
Dear lady, and very, very approachable. I've had the opportunity to meet her at the dinners at Becco, and she just is so kind, and you never feel any pretension on her part.
No, she mentored me,
Yeah.
And she said, her advice to me in the very beginning, she said to me, you just have to be yourself. People just want you to be yourself, right?
If everybody could just be themselves, no matter what they do, what a wonderful world this would be.
When I meet people, I just met somebody here at the studios that said, you're just like you're on TV. I said, yeah, I'm a bad actor. What you see is what you get with me. That's the story, So it's a good thing.
So the format of the show is basically you have a guest on who more often than not owns a restaurant, and will come on and their specialty dish.
Sure.
And
we've had
another guest.
A bunch of the Islip restaurants on, of course, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Tellers and Verace, I could think of off the top of my head.
Yep.
And then Prime,
Yes.
and there's a bunch. Yeah, we've had a bunch
Have
on.
you had Besito on?
Besito's on all the time. John Rieger is a former classmate of mine.
Oh, that's
so
how
he
that
comes. He's the
happened.
owner. He comes on all the time.
Yeah,
and that's a great place, by the way.
They opened one in West Islip
me hungry.
about a year or two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And then I do a bunch of the shows too alone, So Lydia told me you should do some alone because people want to get to know you personally. And so I do. We do 40-something shows a season. I do 4 or 5 someplace else in the country or in Rome if I'm lucky enough to be there. And then I do a bunch in the studio, just me.
Well, let's talk about Rome. That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Please share that story about
I tell you, the brief story of that. I was speaking at a conference on communications, and the Pope was going to be attending. And the guy who was running that turned out to be the head of communications for the Vatican. I knew that guy very well for years. He's sort of my counterpart over there.
Right.
But then he was the boss. So he said to me, ask for anything, because I was going to hire some camera crews and do double work while we're there. He said, I'll do anything you want. I'll prove everything. So I asked for St. Peter's alone for 2 hours. I asked for the Sistine Chapel at night while the sun was setting.
God, that must have been beautiful.
The Vatican gardens, all of these things. But then I also asked for 15 minutes with the Holy Father and a camera, and it was granted. So I had this unbelievable experience of being able to interview the Holy Father and speak with him, and it was a beautiful moment. At the very end of the conversation, he took off his papal zucchetto, the white hat he wears, and he said, I want you to have this. He said, this way you won't forget me. I said, Holy Father,
amazing?
I'm not going to forget you, that's for sure.
Now, that's someone you're not likely to forget.
Not often, no.
And he just comes across as such a genuine...
Oh, my Lord.
Genuine, humble, but full of grace and everything that should be good about a person you can see is in him.
And he's what you see is what you get too. It's the same story. I met him at the Santa Marta, which is the hotel he lives in. And they said to me, he's not going to speak any English. So I said, I only have one Spanish line. Lo siento mucho, pero no hablo español muy bien. That's it. I don't speak Spanish very well.
Right.
So when he came in, I said, Papa, lo siento mucho, pero no hablo español muy bien. He goes, you're from New York, right? I said, yeah, I am. He goes, it's all right. I speak Brooklyn. Oh,
my God, that is so cool.
He spoke English the whole time. So it was great. It was a real treat,
Yeah, so I've seen that video, and it's just very inspiring.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It really is.
And even after it happened, I was like kind of second guessing. I said, that really just happened? It's hard to believe, He was going to the papal audience from there, and we were walking down the steps, and the Pope-mobile was there, and he said, do you want to ride? And I said, do I want to ride in the Pope-mobile? Of course I do. Let's go. But his own security guard stopped me.
Oh, isn't
And he
that
says, I'm so
interesting?
sorry, Monsignor, you cannot come. You cannot come with the Holy Father. And the Pope looked back at me. He says, don't worry, I got you good seats. And I sat right up in the general audience. I sat right next to him.
That's
in front of the
really cool.
Cardinals and everything else. So it was pretty funny.
When Pope Benedict came to New York to Yankee Stadium, right?
Yes,
it was
of course.
Before
Yep.
it was Citi Field.
Yep.
I remember having the opportunity to go, and for me, I mean, we were so far away. My sister and I went, and we were so far away, but yet you just get this sense of being in such a special place.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's just a special, moment in time.
That presence.
When the Pope comes out in the Pope-mobile,
Sure. You never
and then he
forget.
was speaking. It was just remarkable.
And you know who cooked for Pope Benedict, of course, when he was here visiting? That what you're talking about. And
Yes.
Pope Francis, Lydia cooked for them both
did
times.
she really?
She did their meals. She cooked all their meals.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
it's
can.
incredible.
Having
Yeah.
met her, I can. Tell me about some of the other shows that you have on there now.
We have a show called The Word, which is the weekly homily that you would
Mm-hmm.
hear at Mass, just to kind of prep you up for the Mass that's going to be coming. We have a women's show, which is a great one called Hope and Mercy,
Mm-hmm.
which is for women talking about issues from the Catholic perspective. We have 9 different bishops or cardinals that do shows. Cardinal Dolan is one of them.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you to talk. We only have a little bit of time left,
Yeah.
but talk a little bit about the Cardinal. He's another one who is what you see is what you get.
Absolutely.
Just a great guy.
We're great friends, and
Yeah.
I stay with him sometimes. He's a wonderful guy, and his show is really very topical, and he's very much at home on it, and you really get to know him. I would urge you to take a look at it, and you fall in love with him right away.
I have seen it.
Yeah.
I really have. So we are going to have to wind up. I can't tell you how delighted I am that you took the time to be here. I know how busy you are and the demands on your schedule, but any parting words for everyone out there?
Well, my parting words would be have hope.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of storms. Have hope. Our faith is bigger than all of this, and just have hope.
Oh, thank you so much, Father Jim, and thank you all for watching and listening.